This is already our last episode. Last time we learned more about how the mechanism is constructed, with a focus on the moon. In this video we will share with you our interpretation of the Antikythera mechanism and give some concluding remarks. We've already gone over a few explanations for the purpose of the Antikythera mechanism: teaching, navigation, calendrical, notably Olympian, and astrological functions. It might even have been meant for a combination of those uses.
Still, what might be the most impressive to us modern beholders is the accuracy with which astronomical cycles and phenomena were modeled, and the quality of the engineering that the ancient Greeks demonstrated.
Possibly, ancient Greeks built other mechanisms to model natural phenomena, although none were found. Indeed, the Hellenistic period, just before and for some during which the Antikythera mechanism was built, saw many developments in other sciences, as well as in philosophy or the arts. Moreover, this was an era when the territory of ancient Greece had been expanded, with Alexander the Great's conquests in the 3rd century BC into the Mediterranean world, West and Central Asia, even reaching the Indian subcontinent. We've seen how knowledge from the Babylonians and the Egyptians was incorporated into the mechanism.
This cultural exchange through invasions plays an important role in history, and it's interesting to consider why the fragments of the Antikythera mechanism are found in a Roman shipwreck.
Had they understood the advanced technology they had in front of them, and thus wanted to bring it back to their capital?
Or had they taken it as tribute, like any other?
In 146 BC, the Romans defeated Carthage in the Lost Punic War, and in the years after that brought many treasures to Rome. Possibly the Antikythera mechanism traveled for similar reasons.
We already looked at the different Asian cultures' practices of calendar making. But what's also impressive is the technologies they use to materialize their knowledge of the sky.
In that episode we had mentioned Stonehenge and other stone arrangements, and of course there are many pyramids, temples, and other monuments all over the world which are astronomically aligned and are studied in archaeoastronomy. Again, the questions of the technologies used to build them appears, as well as that of the investment into these huge representations of the sky.
To this day, a lot of resources are invested for space exploration and to build new and better technologies to study our universe. Observatories, space telescopes, and obviously the 20th century even saw the first humans in space.
To summarize what we learned in the History of Science sections, by looking broadly at different cultures' practices but also understanding the civilization that produced the artifact we're interested in, we got some perspective on the possibly unique story of the object at hand.
Equinoxes and solstices were celebrated by many Asian cultures. In fact, many of the monuments we just talked about were somehow linked with these events.
Equinoxes are the time of the year when the day is as long as the night, corresponding to the moment when the sun crosses the Earth's equatorial plane. At latitudes where we have 4 seasons, the autumn equinox around the 21st of September marks the beginning of fall, and the spring equinox around the 21st of March that of spring. In this case, after the sun crosses the equatorial plane, it will be in the northern celestial hemisphere and will heat up our northern hemisphere.
On the contrary, after the autumn equinox, it goes to the southern celestial hemisphere, and it's time for a cold winter in the north.
The solstices can be thought of as corresponding to the days precisely in between the equinoxes, around the 21st of December. It's the winter solstice and the shortest day in the northern and longest in the southern hemisphere.
Conversely, the summer solstice, around the 21st of June, marks the longest day in the northern and shortest in the southern hemisphere.
It's probably the way these events mark the cycles of seasons that made them stand out to ancient stargazers. Nowadays we use the position of the sun at the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, as an origin point in celestial coordinates.
There are different coordinate systems used in astronomy to define the position of stars and other celestial objects. We are now going to focus on the equatorial system.
In that system, right ascension is the coordinate evaluated eastwards in units of time from 0 hours at the vernal equinox. Declination is the other coordinate, evaluated in degrees plus or minus from the celestial equator, the projection of the Earth's equator onto the sky. The imaginary line from the north celestial pole to the south celestial pole that passes through the zenith, the point directly above you, is the meridian. Stars and other objects pass through the meridian in order of increasing right ascension.
As a concrete example, Sirius's right ascension is 6 hours and 45 minutes, and Aldebaran's is 4 hours and 35 minutes. So Sirius will cross your meridian 2 hours and 10 minutes before Aldebaran.
Another example, which you will have guessed, is that exactly at the autumn equinox, the right ascension of the objects crossing the meridian is 12 hours.
In the Antikythera Mechanism, some of the inscriptions that have been deciphered allude to the Equinoxes and Solstices.
They are located in the parapegma, a sort of almanac, above and beneath the front dial, suggesting that they were events that ought to be contemplated. To resume, in the astronomy sections, we learned about the astrophysical processes which are represented on the dials of the Antikythera mechanism. First, the front dial, with the zodiac and the 5 known planets, as well as the moon, then the cycles modeled on the back dials. The original mechanism was made out of bronze and was encased in a wooden box with bronze engraved panels on the inside.
For our replica, bronze was not the ideal material, as it is difficult to work with and is also quite expensive. Instead, we use plastic gears on aluminum shafts. Aluminum sheets will be used as plates to maintain the shafts. The outer casing will be made from transparent acrylic sheets that are joined by metal shafts and nuts and bolts.
This will allow viewers to see the mechanism at work while they are driving it with the handle.
Military pointers will be 3D printed from plastic filaments. Assembling a complex mechanism can be the most complicated and frustrating part of producing it, especially for a complicated gearbox like this one.
We have talked extensively about the gears, but the original mechanism is also made of plates, dials, bearings, rivets, pins, nails, and sliding catches.
The plates run parallel to each other and are held in place by a wooden subframe and an external box, much like a shelf. The larger gears are placed close to the plates and are supported by spacers, narrow curved strips of bronze, under the perimeters of the gears that prevent the gears from rocking on their axis.
No screws or nuts and bolts were used in the original mechanism, a luxury we have for our replica.
To save time and money while ensuring quality, another modification we made is that we have recalculated some of the gears and gear ratios to allow us to buy as many off-the-shelf gears as possible. Some of the gears will be laser cut from thick plastic sheets. Larger gears will be laser cut and then supported by thin laser cut aluminum, forming an exoskeleton which will be connected to each other via nuts and bolts. Gears will be fixed to shafts using knurling the shafts, using files to form a crisscross rough area that will hold the gear.
Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we haven't been able to manufacture the replica yet, and what we've just talked about remains theoretical work. We expect to build it before the end of this academic year, and to display it at UCL so that you too can experiment with this wonderful machine.
We hope that you enjoyed this interdisciplinary video series, and that you learned something new.
Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the video where we will show you how we actually realize the replica.